All right, welcome back, everybody. Here we are for our last session. Masood, you with us, brother?
I am here. What's going on? What's going on?
One more time calling in from outer space.
Hey, it's all good, brother. I'll let you know how things are going on Neptune, man. Everything's real cool.
It's good to hear. You know, I was up all night thinking about that, so I'm glad to hear that. Well, here we are. We're here for our last session, and it's been quite a ride these last couple of days.
It's been awesome. A lot of interesting conversation, man. Presentations have been amazing. Felt really good about being able to attend Celeste's talk today, which was so just interesting, and a lot of practical, ways that we can engage in conversation and build community. And that's been true for everybody who's spoken. It's just been really, really remarkable. Devin Moore, we can go on and on. Enjoyed my conversation with Penn last night, which is great. So it's been a really great conference. So really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, for sure. I want to really appreciate people who've been kind of sticking with it, especially given that, it is a Saturday, and like
for sure.
Earlier today, it's like we're all sort of in off mode sometimes on Saturdays. And I think that the reason we scheduled the conference this way is because there are a lot of folks who just can't get off during the week. And so we want to at least try to have some people have an opportunity, but that also means that people have to take their personal time sometimes. And that can be a stretch for those. So we do have this one last great session this afternoon. We've been covering all kinds of different directions. We talked about business, we talked about society, we talked about the arts, we talked about personally. Now we've got Doctors Randie Gottlieb and Dr. Daudi Abe, who are going to talk with us about teachers and educating teachers about the oneness of humankind. And I really can't think of anything more important, when we look to the future.
For sure.
That our teachers have to have a good sense of how to deal with this stuff if they're going to guide our children to see a new possibility, because they're certainly not getting it from the adults around them right now for the most part.
Absolutely. And, I think that it seems to me that the younger that we can get to, our children in terms of helping them to really have an appreciation for diversity. And as unity is predicated on diversity, and helping them to understand that and really embrace that. I mean, the better we're going to be as a society going forward. So it's much more difficult, I think, to correct attitudes the older we get, because things get set, So the longer that we can get when they're tender, when they're, pliable, the more success we can have in terms of building a new society, a new global context and understanding. So. Yeah.
So true. When I used to teach, it was always amazing to me how quickly kids could get off it about stuff. We as adults, we have a whole story about it. We have a justification for it. We have our armoring. But the kids, it's like, oh, okay, that's that.
So, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, look, our guests are with us. Randie and Daudi are with us, so welcome to both of you. We're going to step aside and let you have the floor, and we'll be coming back on about an hour or so, and be able to listen to questions and the like from everybody else. So we'll see you then.
Well, thank you so much, Howard and Masood, and we'd also like to thank Smitty and the NCRA for inviting us. We are truly excited to be here with you all today. So we would like to begin. I'm sorry. Am I screen sharing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And okay. So are we ready to plunge right ahead?
Yep.
Okay. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the people of the Yakama Nation, the original stewards of this land, and encourage you to be aware of Indigenous peoples and voices wherever you are. And we would also like to thank our funding partners, including many individuals without whose support our work would not be possible. And since this conference is about collaboration for Race Amity, we would also like to acknowledge that we collaborate with schools and school districts who promote our workshops. They register the participants, they promote the workshops, and they register everyone, including teachers, principals, school counselors, librarians, office staff. We've even had the school bus driver and the lunch cook. And we also collaborate with our Board of Education here in Washington State, which provides continuing education clock hours for our trainings so that educators can count them towards professional development on diversity topics is now required for all administrators and teachers in the state to keep their license. So today we're going to, for the next hour, we'll look at teaching unity, educating teachers about the oneness of humankind. We'll start with a brief overview of the need, then what is UnityWorks, a few highlights from our school program, K through 12, a sample training activity, and then we'll hear the voices of some of the teachers themselves and their changing views on race. And finally, some closing thoughts, and depending on time, any questions that you might have for us. And overall, I would say that our goal is to help teachers, 80% of whom across the country are white, and here in Washington State, 90% of them are white, help those teachers move from the concept of humanity as separate races and from prejudices passed down for generations to the recognition that we are one human family, so that they in turn can share this understanding with their students. But first, we'd like to take just a moment to share why each of us is doing this work. Dr. Abe.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gottlieb. I would say that primarily, if I can show a picture, this is my granddaughter, Makeda Lynn Abe. And I would say primarily she's the reason, but she represents a generation of young people. And the people who have come before us have worked very hard to move the ball forward, I guess we can say. And so I feel as a member of my generation that it is partly my responsibility to do what I can to help with that, so that the position is forwarded for future generations, as I just showed. And just for me, I kind of accidentally falling into this profession. Had not necessarily thought that I would become a teacher, but through circumstances, and it's just Dr. Gottlieb and I were talking about this yesterday about the strange ways in which seemingly little events in your life can actually have lasting ripple effects in terms of how your journey turns out. And I was fortunate enough when I was young in my early 20s to have people see things in me that I didn't see in myself, and help put me on this path to not only be a teacher, but also kind of children, but also kind of transition into higher education. And I'm a hip hop guy and hip hop kid who was essentially kind of raised on the culture. The first record that I bought in the fall of 1979 was Rapper's Delight. Again, just a sheer coincidence. And it has led to so many things, and just including me teaching a hip hop class at Seattle Central College, writing a book 6 a.m. about West Coast hip hop in mainly California, and then writing also a book about hip hop in Seattle, Emerald Street. And so the totality of these experiences has led me to feel very fortunate and very humbled that I'm in a place that I'm able to participate in an event such as this with esteemed colleagues such as Dr. Gottlieb, and I just have to say that it is an honor, and I am extremely humbled and honored to be amongst you all today.
Thank you, Dr. Abe. So this is my story. I am the elephant in the room, or in this case, the elephant on the Zoom. So you may have noticed that I'm white, and I hear it all the time. White people can't do this work. You have no right to speak about prejudice. And my reply to that is prejudice is not a people of color issue any more than domestic abuse is a women's issue or child abuse is a children's issue. It's a human issue that affects us all. And then they say, but you have all the power. And my reply to that is, yes, I do have some power, not all of it, but I have skin color privilege. Would you rather have me use that to get more for myself or to work for justice for us all? But then they say, how can you possibly understand? And I can't. It's true. I don't know what it's like to be Black or brown in this country. I don't know personally the pain of genocide or daily racism or stolen land. But I do know what it's like to lose a job because of my skin color, to lose a business because of my nationality, to be marginalized for my religious faith and stereotyped for my ethnicity, and discriminated against and discounted because of my sex. And I've been threatened with death for dating a man from another racial group. And none of that feels good. And those are human feelings. So how can I be okay with that if my brothers and sisters of color are feeling that way all the time, every day? And so my reply is, truth has no color. We all have a contribution to make and a role to play. So I want to talk just a little bit about the need for teaching unity. And I think Howard and Masood touched on it briefly, introducing this session.
I forgot his wife was coming.
I'm
When
sorry.
today.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. Sorry. So just a few statistics. In the year 2000, 1/3 of the people in this country were what are termed people of color. I don't feel that term is accurate. I think we all have a color, but that's a whole nother presentation. So I'm going to use the term for now. We're familiar with it. In the year 2014, half of the students in our nation's schools were students of color. Here where I live in Yakima, we are way beyond that halfway mark. We have schools that are 85% Hispanic or Latinx. Our tribal school is 100% Native kids and so forth. And then our census tells us that in the year 2045, what we call minorities, which is another term that I won't discuss now, will be the majority in this country. And we are already well beyond that halfway point in about 5 states now, I think: California, New Mexico, maybe Arizona, and some of the others along our southern border. Just an example here in Washington State, some of the schools that we are working with. In fact, we just did a workshop for the Kent School District, which is near Seattle, all this week. Kent has students from 138 different language backgrounds. Just think about that. 138. White Center, Washington, which is near the Seattle SeaTac Airport. Excuse me, my throat is a little hoarse. We've been having some smoke here in the air, and it's a little irritated, so I apologize. But White Center, interestingly named, the largest group of students are Somali refugees. And one teacher told me that when she started class this year, they were teaching English, there was a construction noise outside the window, like a loud sound, and all the kids screamed and dove under their desks and would not come out. And why? Think about it. They had just come here to this country, a foreign country for them, did not speak the language, had no family, didn't know anyone. They had been leaving a war zone. Some of them had seen their villages burned down and family members killed right before their eyes. And here they are sitting in a class learning about capital letters and, punctuation marks. Well, think about the children who are in our schools today. Here in Yakima, Washington, I live on the Yakima Nation Reservation. 84% of the students in the Yakima school districts live below the federal poverty level. Some students have 2 moms or 2 dads. For some, their family is a gang. Some students live in shelters, on couches, and in cars. I believe that our diversity is our greatest strength, and at the same time, some of our most divisive problems. And I'm not just talking about Yakima, with racial prejudice being the most vital and challenging issue facing humanity, all of us today. Many children, for example, already hold negative stereotypes of other racial groups by the time they enter 1st grade. And I have to tell you, I got a phone call last week from a superintendent, one of the districts in our area, who said, all of a sudden, students are using the N-word. They're calling each other the N-word in derogatory ways. What should I do? This is affecting our first graders, kindergartners. Reflecting mainstream society's prejudices, our schools often include biased curricula, textbooks with missing chapters, discriminatory discipline, which Dr. Abe is going to talk about in just a moment, bullying, and low expectations for students of color, all leading to persistent achievement and opportunity gaps. Dr. Abe.
Thank you, Dr. Gottlieb. So when we're talking about discriminatory discipline, repeated studies show significantly harsher punishments for students of color, low-income students, and those with disabilities beginning in preschool. For this, here we go with the tech, for the same offense. And I have to say that I actually wrote a dissertation on this topic as it occurs in Seattle Public Schools, and have done work with the district around this. And SPS has some of the worst rates around disproportionate discipline for students of color, and even more specifically, African-American students in the nation. And in the time since this has become news and known throughout reported by outlets, the issue has gotten worse. And so that just goes to show that knowing about the problem is one thing, but being able to remedy it is an entirely other thing. And how we go about doing that and creating teachers that can push back against that is another conversation, as Dr. Gottlieb said earlier, for another day. And then when we're talking about the school to prison pipeline, because there's a direct correlation between disproportionate school discipline and the school to prison pipeline. It is quote, an epidemic that is plaguing schools across the nation, is what PBS said. Yeah, there's that tech again. And I just have to say that my work with teachers and working to create teachers that are able to recognize these dynamics and push back against them has also spilled over into law enforcement. And I think that teachers and police officers, there's similarities in the jobs, in that they're both underappreciated, they're both underpaid. Usually when they show up in the news, it's around something bad, but also they are both relationship-driven occupations. And there is also a great amount of subjectivity that goes into the decision-making process about who succeeds and who fails. And by that, I mean, with teachers, it's subjective a lot of times around who is sent to the office for a certain offense and who is not, and who stays in class and that kind of thing. And also with police officers, it's about who gets arrested or who just gets a warning. You know what I'm saying? Or who gets a ticket, or who, again, gets let off with a warning. And so for me, and in the midst of this work, the discussion around the biases and the prejudices, which we all have, that we bring to this work, has to be put out to the forefront and the center in the discussion of training. Because all teachers, generally speaking, teacher prep programs get the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But then there's something that we like maybe to refer as some different R's around anti-racist and relationship based approaches that need to be central and foundational, just as the 3 R's are foundational to teacher training and police officer training, need to be central and foundational to the training in terms of how do we relate and how do we speak to and how do we develop authentic, student-centered, in the case of teachers, relationships that allow the positive outcomes that I think everybody wants. I don't think there's a whole lot of debate about whether or not we want students to succeed. the debate just, at least nowadays, is starting to be around how do we do that? And the extension of ourselves and challenging ourselves and not looking at students or their families when there's a failure, you know, for a student to succeed or meet expectations, instead of pointing the finger at the students and the families, about professional introspection and how we can do better by our students, not only as teachers, but also down the road as police officers. Dr. Gottlieb.
Thank you. So the reason we exist and this is it in a nutshell, with our nation's largely white middle-class teaching force and English-speaking monolingual, an increasingly diverse student population, and a society becoming ever more polarized by a rising tide of prejudice and hate, we believe that there's a critical need, as Dr. Abe pointed out, to provide educators of all colors with training and tools and support to effectively address the equity and diversity issues in our classrooms and schools. So yes, there might be a few people on this call who remember these signs. We have made a lot of progress over the years, and we still have a long way to go, with some of us marching for white supremacy and others for the right to breathe. We will not make significant progress as a community or a nation or as a world until we find unity in all of our diversity, until we recognize that there is no us or them, it's all us. Dr. Abe.
Thank you, Dr. Gottlieb. Again, your animations are fire. So UnityWorks. Founded 9 years ago, UnityWorks is a national nonprofit educational organization based in Yakima, Washington, USA. We're committed to a belief in the oneness of humanity, the value of diversity, and the need for unity, with a special focus on K-12 schools. We work with teachers, school administrators, and community leaders to reduce prejudice and promote cross-racial and cross-cultural understanding, equity, and inclusion. We offer diversity training, educational resources, and ongoing support with the goal of building a local capacity for positive multicultural change. In 2021, we provided training to 347 Washington state educators, plus over 625 people took part in our webinars and conference presentations. Working with educators has a multiplier effect, since a single teacher can reach thousands of students over the course of a career. These students, in turn, are forming the values that will shape our world for generations to come. Involvement in our school program begins with an action-packed 5-day summer training institute, which prepares site teams with the knowledge, tools, and strategies needed to develop a successful diversity in action plan. High school and college students have participated in the Summer Institute as well. The training is designed to build capacity at the grassroots, empowering each team to create its own blueprint for change. Training topics include race and racism, culture, gender, language, stereotyping, prejudice, colorblindness, discipline, curriculum and instruction, and much more. A key component of all UnityWorks trainings is helping educators to recognize the oneness of humankind. Training sessions are interactive, hands-on, and have real-life classroom applications. Guest speakers serve to personalize the training content by sharing stories and answering questions about their own lives. With singing, dancing, role plays, poetry, arts and crafts, and other activities, the training is also a lot of fun. Okay, so here we have a read for our host. If she could jump on and give us our read here.
Yeah. Prior to coming, I thought, a whole week? Don't they know I have a lot to do? I've already had 2 courses on it, but this training was much more in depth. It's very relevant. I'm excited. Everyone should have this opportunity. I became an educator to help others. UnityWorks has given us the tools. It's definitely a need. We have to address the issues, and now we know how.
Alejandra Rodriguez, assistant principal.
From Craig Olden, school counselor. I came in here with an intellectual lens. Through the experiences this week, it's gone from my brain to my heart. Joy Mendoza, high school student. UnityWorks opened my eyes. Even though I'm young, I can make a difference. Others say I can't, but I can. Edith Godinez, ESD 105 educational advocate for marginalized youth. Because of this training, my hope in humanity will never be lost.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that read. So the Spring Multicultural Conference, in addition to the Summer Training Institute, an annual conference provides an opportunity for teams to network, share best practices, and plan collaborative projects for the coming year. This network of teams creates a learning community that can share ideas and resources, build confidence, and offer moral support. We're not just providing goods and services, but building local capacity. Our goal is not only to change policies and practices, but hearts and minds. When forced online by the pandemic, our school program and spring conferences were put on hold. However, Dr. Gottlieb.
Oh, I think that next one is yours.
This allowed us to expand our trainings across the country and beyond, including a recent workshop with participants from where? China.
China, where it was 3 a.m. for them. Thank you, Dr. Abe.
Dr. Gottlieb, I pass the mic.
So we're going to go through just very quickly through some of the highlights from our school program. And these include I think we'll start with high school, middle school, and elementary school. So a wide variety of programs and activities have been organized by the UnityWorks site teams, including one high school here in town analyzed its data on racial achievement gaps. And those of you, many of you, well, those who are educators know that there's a large gap in achievement, especially between Black students and white students. And Native students, people maybe not are aware, are even lower than that. But there's a large gap. And they looked at those gaps and decided that they would provide diversity training for their staff to help close some of those opportunity gaps. And based on the training, they developed monthly lessons on stereotyping, prejudice, race, and culture for all students. If you see this map right here, this is a map where teachers, they put up a big map in the cafeteria and everyone's stuck a star or several stars on the map where their ancestors, as far back as they knew, where their ancestors came from. And then they did another map with different color stars. Actually, I think they used the same map with different color stars where the students put up their stars. And it was interesting that you see this cluster right here around Western Europe, and the students' stars were mostly from Mexico and some from Asia, Pacific Rim students and so forth. and a few from other places. But the major clusters were very different. And that was just an aha moment for the teachers, thinking that, wow, it's not just language, but culture, traditions, and hundreds of other things. And we don't know those things about our students. There is a disconnect here. They also organized an International Students Cultural Fair. And this group of students here is from Ukraine. And parents and all the students and everybody came to this fair, and they gave you a passport. So you would go around to each booth and get a stamp in your passport after talking with the locals there. It was a lot of fun, educational and fun. They also arranged for an all-school learning event with Lakota hoop dancer Kevin Locke, who recently passed away. He's still in our hearts. And his very well-received presentation reached over 2,000 students, and it focused on understanding the oneness of humankind. And here you can see his hoops. I don't know how many of you have been able to see his hoop dance before. He said that those 4 different colors of hoops, red, white, black, and yellow, represented different colors of humankind. And he asked one of the students, and thousands of students were in the auditorium after his dance. They came down. He said, what would happen if I removed one of the hoops from this circle? And nobody knew. And he invited one student to come down. She pulled the hoop out, and the whole circle collapsed. And he said, this is why we need all of us. We all belong to this circle. We are all part of it. And it was a very powerful demonstration. And from the assistant principal, Sharon Harris, I feel confident, she said, that we are headed in the right direction. At another high school, the UnityWorks team organized a very well-attended exhibit on African American history, which was a major missing chapter from their textbooks. And students formed a multicultural club dedicated to learning about each other and serving the local community. And this club was organized by Alejandro Rodriguez, this young man in the pink shirt on the left here. He had come with his UnityWorks team, all adults except for him, to our summer training. And he had decided that this is what I want to do with the rest of my life, is be of service to humanity. And I'm going to start by forming a multicultural club on my high school campus. One of the first things they did was learn about each student in the school, and went to visit their families and learned their history and how they got to Yakima. And then they all decided the next thing, and this was at a time where anti-Muslim sentiment was high and there had just been a Muslim ban in our country. And they decided to seek out the local mosque and talk to the imam. And I didn't even know there was a local mosque in my town. And they went and met with the imam and asked about Islam and, what are some of the teachings and principles, and just made a connection, built a bridge. This is all initiated by students. Now, at the middle school level, one school was very concerned with the lack of parental involvement, which correlates with low academic achievement. And most of the parents, as I said previously, in this particular school, 85% of the families are Hispanic, mostly from a particular province in Mexico, from Michoacan. And the parents did not speak English for the most part, did not feel welcome at school. And this is what the school decided to do. Their team set the goal of increasing parent and community involvement. And they consulted with local families and decided to do this by learning about the cultures represented in their school, including the cultures, not just of the students, but also of the staff. So staff, students, and parents worked in teams to prepare for a year-end cultural celebration. Each month, they met monthly. Each month, the teams grew in size and excitement as they studied their own history, geography, cultural traditions, religious beliefs, current struggles, and much more. Speaking through an interpreter, one parent, this is her on the right, described her experience and the joy that she felt at being included. The plan was an amazing success, with participation growing from only 5 parents at the start of the year to over 450 at their culminating activity. And Assistant Principal Julio Sanchez said, "We've been improving our program for 4 years now and have been making progress towards our goal every year." Now down to the elementary school level. One school created a unity wall with changing displays, and they organized a No Room in My Heart for Prejudice art and essay contest. And this is the school librarian right here, and this is one of the school counselors. They put this together. Each classroom was asked to explain what No Room in My Heart for Prejudice meant to them. And this required students as a class to work together towards a common goal, incorporating a variety of learning styles and experiences, and drawing on the perspectives and talents of all of them. Another teacher, as part of a science lesson, created a family tree to show that although there are many branches, we are all leaves of one tree. And I just realized that there we have it. Nice demonstration. Another school had each classroom choose a country from among those represented by staff and students. And they traveled in their magic school bus. Here it is, Mrs. Frizzle's magic bus. And they researched the country's geography, history, language, food, music, holidays, and lots more throughout the year. This was a year-long school project. Each class then prepared a bilingual presentation to share what they had learned with the rest of the school, the parents, and the community. Enthusiasm for learning was extremely high. Kids could not wait to get to school every day. And the final event was held in the gym with standing room only. And I have to say, I was at the event, and it was, most of the parents were Spanish speaking, and they had two moderators, a little girl and a little boy, one English and one Spanish. And I was not the only one in tears when the first moderator got up and said, "Fuimos a visitar nuestra familia humana alrededor del mundo." We went to visit our human family around the world. And I looked around and there were tears everywhere. They also created student artwork to illustrate the concept of unity and diversity. And here they've pasted their photographs, their school pictures all around the world. In another class, students played Unity Bingo. Teachers created the questions based on what they had learned about their students. For example, who plays an instrument? Who speaks Spanish? Who has been to a powwow? And the students were truly excited to learn about each other, and it didn't hurt that everyone got a prize. This was probably my favorite program at this elementary school. The UnityWorks team was very concerned about increasing racial bullying, and which was up in the double digits and getting worse by the day. Students were calling each other the N-word. They were pushing and shoving, and there were fights. They successfully eliminated these students and completely changed the school culture through a series of lessons directly talking about race and skin color with elementary school students. And some people will ask, and I've heard this a lot, don't you think it's too young? Or, aren't kindergartners and first graders, isn't it too young to be talking about things like race and prejudice and racism with these kids? No. I would say if a student is old enough to be affected by racism, their classmates are old enough to learn about it. So what they did as their culminating project, over 50 staff and 700 students painted their self-portraits using accurate skin colors. And then they displayed these throughout the hallways of the school. This is their UnityWorks team here, school principal right here, and Ms. Thompson's class. So as a direct result of this activity, incidents of racial bias went from double digits to 0 and stayed there. And why? Every single student was recognized and acknowledged for who they were. Every skin color was good. It was up on the wall. And the kids got so excited, they brought their parents into school and said, "Mom, Dad, look, my picture's up on the wall. And these are all my classmates and my teacher." They were one of the flowers in the flower garden, and they felt like a flower. And this is from the principal, Les Juarez Stump from Hoover Elementary. She said, "We are now a community. So just at the request of teachers, they said, well, you have lots of great theories and ideas and facts and so forth, but what we really need is some resources. We need some lesson plans. We need projects, things that we can start, bring to our class tomorrow. So UnityWorks put together some educational resources to support these efforts. And you can find them on our website, unityworks.org, and then just click on bookstore, and you'll find lots of free and low-cost resources if you are working with children. And for parents, teachers, and students as well. So I'll close out my section with a short video of teachers and administrators sharing their thoughts on the program. It's about 2 minutes, and then we will be back to Dr. Abe. So here we go.
The UnityWorks project is a fundamental piece of helping build a better society, in my point of view. To do the projects, to do the thinking, to do the creative work that builds peace is really important to start in childhood. It's important to do this work with kids. It's also important to do this work with adults that are working in schools.
I think UnityWorks is an opportunity for us to begin relating to each other, not as the categories that we represent, such as which race we are, what our socioeconomic status is, whether or not we're male or female, anything like that, but rather as people who all have hopes and dreams of somehow living a better life and having that life being possible for our children and our community.
It's a way of us validating every single student we serve, despite what their ethnicity or their upbringing may be. I think it's an inclusionary program that just makes me as a teacher feel good, even about myself, teaching them Black history or other kinds of just knowledge of how our world works and all the people and the cultures that have come to build our world.
Part of our jobs as teachers and educators is to tell them that there really is only one human race. And we have lots of cultures, but we really have only one human race. And that's why I think UnityWorks is so vital for our community and other communities in our world.
There's a proverb, African proverb, that says if you want to go fast, you go alone. And if you want to go far, you go together. And I believe that this is why UnityWorks is important, because we want to go far. And in order to do that, we need to work together. And so that's why UnityWorks is important.
UnityWorks.
So I forgot I had one more little section before passing the mic. So for this one, Laura, we're going to need you again, if you would be so kind. We're going to share a sample training activity that we do with the teachers. And this is on skin color and the reality of race. So when we're in person, we do this with, can you all see this? Construction paper and either real people in the classroom from different ethnic and racial backgrounds or photographs of people. And we call up a volunteer, and Laura has been voluntold. So and we're going to ask Laura to match the paper to the faces according to actual skin color, the actual color that you see. So I'll do the first one as an example. This is my neighbor's daughter, Lilita, and her skin is kind of a light tan, brownish color. Pretty good match for her skin. So Laura, what would you say, which is closer, black or brown?
Ooh, I would say brown.
Okay. White or brown?
Wow. So at the brown.
Red or brown?
Brown.
Yellow or brown?
Brown again.
So what does this tell us about society's color coding of human beings? It's a lie. We're just different shades of hue, man. And our colors are a lot closer than we have been taught to believe. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay. So in practice, there is no skin color border. We come in a continuum of hues and shades. And mic to Dr. Abe.
We see what you did there, Dr. Gottlieb, with the hue, man.
You, man.
Yeah, no rest for the weary, because I'm about to call Laura right back up here. So teachers changing views on race. Let's see here. Laura, please.
Valerie O. I never really thought of there being only one race. You really don't get taught that anywhere in life. So when you hear it for the first time, it kind of baffles you. Susan L. The readings about race really opened my eyes. I always thought of race as black, white, red, and yellow, and that colorblindness was good. Now I see that inclusion and awareness are better than just seeing people as all the same. I like the flower garden idea. I've never thought of it that way, appreciating each individual flower for its own beauty. Rock B. When we were told there was only one race, it took me a minute to realize that we are all one race, the human race. It was so simple to understand. As an educator, I must give my students the same awareness before they believe in our society's highly biased view, and it's too late. Patrick P. The fact that this can be supported by science only confirms the prejudice of our past. How are children supposed to understand what is right and wrong when parents and teachers as role models are programming racist ideology at such an early age? Nicole H. I learned today that we are one race, and I am going to educate that we are one race. This idea makes me think of the movie Independence Day, when aliens came to blow us up and we as humans came together as one to fight off violence. Someday I would like to see that happen without the aliens.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Laura, for those readings. And I just want to add that these sentiments from these teachers really speak to what we were talking about earlier with regard to the way that teachers are trained and the things that they are instructed to look for and look out for with regard to their students. And there's something that in working with teachers and working to figure out how we can create better teachers that has come up. And it's the idea of academic trauma. And in my opinion, academic trauma is one of the most underdiagnosed conditions, not only for current students, but also for former students. And a lot of that stuff comes from the experiences that they've had in school. You know, I wrote my dissertation on disproportionate discipline in Seattle public schools, and I focused on grades 4 through 8. And this is like in the early 2000s when I did this, focusing on grades 4 through 8. And that was my focus area because that is around the time where you start seeing the most pronounced beginnings of the achievement gap. But in the time since, the more research has revealed that this disproportionate discipline begins for Black students anyway, as early as preschool. And a quick anecdote, I was talking about this at a local elementary school here a few years ago, and there was a Black woman who was, this was on a parent night. And there was a Black woman in the crowd, and she came up to me in the audience. She came up to me afterward and was talking about her daughter, who was a preschooler. And her preschool daughter, this Black woman's preschool daughter, had been suspended from preschool for what? Wait for it, for not taking a nap. And so if you think about the repercussions that could, the ripple effects, you know, that could occur in this young person's life as they move through school. And, you know, student files sometimes follow students around like arrest files. Like and teachers start talking amongst each other, if you're going to say that success is a function of expectation, well, then failure, there's a function of expectation and failure too. And so teachers sometimes, without even knowing about it, can project those negative expectations and kind of excel the process and steer, whether conscious or not, students towards those either positive or negative outcomes. I think that when you have teachers who their first real interactions, if you're talking about white teachers, their first real interactions with students of color is the time they get in the classroom, then that's a problem in terms of the teacher training. And the program that I work with in terms that works with Seattle Public Schools and Grow Your Own, one of the things that we tell is primarily students of color is that being a person of color is not an automatic qualifier for being an effective teacher for students of color, just like being a white teacher is not an automatic disqualifier. And these are the things that we're trying to just figuratively pound into the heads of our candidates as they move through the program. And I think that as we move forward and as the practice of training teachers moves forward and begins to identify and incorporate more of these holistic aspects of teaching, not just the 3 R's that I was talking about earlier, but some of the R's that go into, because the aspects of specific culturally responsive teaching that are good for students of color are good for all students. They benefit all students. It's the rising tide floats all boats type of theory. And so getting back to these points here, these teachers are making, the added knowledge and the warm demanders, if we can call them that we look to produce in terms of new teachers are the ones that can help push the ideas that UnityWorks has brought forth and make them manifest themselves in the experiences of students, all students moving forward. So over to Dr. Gottlieb.
So friends, I'm looking at the clock here, and we just have a couple minutes left. We want to save a few minutes for questions if there are any. So Dr. Abe, do you have a closing thought to share with the group?
Yeah, I just think that I was mentioning earlier about the connections that I've seen in my work with teaching candidates as well as police academy cadets, and the fact that both of these occupations are what we might call gatekeeper professions, and the fact that they have profound impacts on the lives of young people, and more specifically in this case, the lives of young people of color. I'm hopeful and I am confident that as we move forward, we can look back over decades that there has been progress. It's certainly, I'm an impatient person. It's certainly not as quick or as fast or pushing forward as I would like, but I understand, and I have young people who express the same kind of frustrations to me. And I have to remind them, as I have to remind myself, that centuries of dehumanization are not going to be undone in a couple of decades. However, as long as we can make steady progress, the hope is that we can leave the place a little bit better than we found it for people like my beautiful granddaughter, who I showed you at the beginning of the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Abe. A few closing thoughts of my own. We can't change history. We all inherited this system of racism, but we can make history. Awareness and good intentions are not enough. Adding diversity to our mission statement is not enough. And celebrating Black History Month is not enough. But rather than feeling powerless and discouraged, and that's easy to do sometimes, whatever our ethnicity, our gender, or skin color, each one of us has an important role to play. And those of us, forgot this. One thing that all of us can do is ask who's not at the table when we get to work tomorrow. Who's not at the table? And another thing that we can all do is expand the circle. widen the circle of who is included when we say us. Even if it's something as simple as taking a new friend out for a cup of coffee and starting the conversation. We can all do those things. For those of us who are teachers, we can create safe, equitable, and inclusive schools where diversity is welcomed and where everyone, all kids and staff and the bus driver, where everyone knows that they belong. In a world torn by injustice, hate, and war, our classrooms can become models of hope for the future. So we have just a couple minutes left, and we'll turn it back to our hosts and see if there are any questions from the audience or whatever you'd like.
Great, thanks. You want to take your screen off sharing? That's great. So we can all be here. Great. All right. So we're here, and we've actually got Smitty with us. Smitty, good to see you.
Hello.
Hey, Smitty, what's happening?
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, brother. Good to see you, man.
Good. Yeah, I've been here silently in the wings.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, thanks so much for your wonderful presentation. I couldn't help, Masood, I couldn't help but thinking about what Celeste was talking about why people feel the way they do about these kinds of programs. And so often it feels like people are going to get a root canal or something when you do diversity training.
Yeah.
And now I'm hearing the two of you talk. It's like, I can see the fun and the joy and the curiosity and the kind of stuff that you're inspiring. It's easy to see why you've been so successful. Congratulations.
Yeah, it makes me want to go back and do school again so I can take some of these. I would love to do
I won't go that far.
I would love that.
but I encourage you to do it. You go, bro. You tell me when to play.
I'll give you a report when I'm done.
All right. So for any of you out there who've been listening, if you've got a question or a comment, please send it in to us, and we'll be glad to share it with our presenters. And in the meantime, what do you see? I'm curious what you see, just because I'm a former educator. How does what are the age groups of the students who the teachers you're working with are focusing on, and how do you see the differences in working with young people of different ages?
Well, they're K through 12, so they're around 5 or 6 years old, and they go up to 18 years old, roughly. So that the entire range in terms of student age. And what was the second question, Howard?
How does your curriculum or the work that you do differ for the students of different ages? Because obviously working with a 5-year-old can be very different than working with a 17-year-old.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we actually do not have a specific prescribed curriculum where you must do this. Rather, we prefer a grassroots approach where we take a team from each school, and we like to work in teams, so it's not just one person, because then that person can get sick or move to another school or get burned out. So if we've got a team and we require at least one teacher, at least one administrator, at least one community representative, it could be a parent or someone else, and then at least one other person from the school of their choice. And we've had, as I mentioned, the lunch lady and the bus driver and the school counselor and so forth. At least 4 people. And then if they want to include more, they can, as many more as they want, but that's our minimum. And some of them have included high school students as well. We don't include younger students because some of the conversation is not age appropriate for little kids.
Right.
So that team then puts together its own plan. During the course of our workshop, they are exposed to different ideas, what other schools have done. We have a curriculum that's called Teaching Unity Toolkit, and that's available on our website. 300 pages of ideas, activities, games, quizzes, crafts, arts, music, songs, all kinds of stuff. And they can draw from that if they wish, and we have lots of other resources from around the world that they can draw on. They put together their plan. And then when our school program was active prior to the pandemic, we would touch base with them whenever they wanted. If they had a question, we'd meet with them at least once a year. How's the plan going? Oh, we had a problem today. Can you come and talk with us? How do we fix this? So it's their plan. They decide what their students need based on their circumstances.
It's so great. So you are you're proverbially teaching them to fish rather than giving them fish. Not only that, but you're giving them the rod and the reel. So that's
true. That's our
really,
goal.
that's great. What a great approach. Yeah.
Well, I want to just add my thanks to you, Randie, and Dr. Abe, for being with us this afternoon. And I enjoyed listening and hearing the presentation, which we will be replaying for a long time and sharing out into the community. I have a burning curiosity on the other side. Dr. Abe, tell me about Emerald Street, man. What's that about? I mean, I'm like, talk to me just quick. I don't want, but I'm like, dang, I need to know more about that. Tell me about that.
Oh, well, Emerald Street is my book about the history of hip hop in Seattle. And it has a foreword by Sir Mix-a-Lot. And I would just kind of briefly say that the most well-known people from Seattle that have achieved mainstream hip-hop success have all done so by kind of going against the grain of their particular times. And specifically, I'm talking about first would be Sir Mix-a-Lot. And you know, his when he got started in the late 80s, he was talking, there's a song called Posse on Broadway. And in that song, there's a sequence in that song. You have to remember that in the late 80s, this was just the time when quote unquote gangster rap was starting to take off. And there's a sequence in that song where him and his friends get into a little conflict with another group of guys. And the conflict is solved with somebody macing somebody else. And that's not exactly what groups like NWA or Ice Cube or Ice-T rather were talking about in the late 80s. Conflict resolution as far as gangster rap went was, you know, with an Uzi or an AK-47 or a shotgun. And when he ultimately wins the Grammy Award for Baby Got Back in 1993, it is a pushback against the kind of Western-centric notions of body shape and what represents beauty. Another example would be Diggable Planets. The leader of that group, Butterfly, is a Seattle native. And they have a song on their first album. They have a song called La Femme Fatale. And La Femme Fatale is actually a pro-choice anthem. And there are not a lot of rappers in the early 1990s who were taking a stance like that. I mean, that song actually name checks Roe v. Wade. So again, that's not something they referred to themselves as insects. They talked about Karl Marx, things like that. That's again not things that necessarily a lot of rappers were doing, but they found success in their own way. And then finally, someone like Macklemore, the two songs that really propelled him to the level of stardom that he achieved would have been Thrift Shop. Those two of these songs go against two of the most longly held norms of mainstream hip hop culture. Thrift Shop, which is about thrift shopping and going to places like Goodwill, goes against the whole idea of bling, which is the notion of flashy jewelry and name brand clothing. And then the other one was Same Love, which goes against that other well-known aspect of mainstream hip hop culture, homophobia. And so the uniqueness and originality, the fact that these people are able to engage these topics through the lens of who come from here, through the lens of hip hop, speaks to the uniqueness and originality that defines the hip hop scene in Seattle.
Okay, cool beans. Well, I appreciate that little micro burst, but I had to ask that question.
Hey, thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I have to give a shout out to the UW shirt too, because my granddaughter is a sophomore at UW. So
let's go.
Oh, okay.
Bow down.
Yeah. All right.
Laura's got some questions.
Thanks again. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a few great questions coming through in both the Q&A and the chat areas of our from our hub. And I'm going to start with Sandy's question. Has it ever worked for a retired teacher to volunteer to share this program in their local school?
So for a retired teacher,
Yeah.
we've had, when the schools put together their team, they choose who's on their school team. And some of them have included retired teachers, but I don't know specifically. I mean, I don't keep track of a list of names or anything, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And there's a comment here from Bill. Beautiful program. I'm concerned with the use of the phrase, a rising tide raises all boats. Growing up in the South as a white man, this phrase was constantly used to imply that those less fortunate would be helped by the rising tide. This works only for boats that are in a watertight condition. If the system is broke, it won't work.
So I have a thought, and Dr. Abe probably has a thought as well.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I would agree 100%. I mean, it's like that trickle-down economics theory. Martin Luther King there's a short excerpt of one of his speeches where he's asking about, someone said, pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. And he says, some of us don't have boots. You know, we've been trampled. I would say change boots to boats. Some of us are boatless. Some of us has boats with leaking holes. Some of us don't have, you know, so I would agree with that. I don't think that I use that phrase, but if I did, I shouldn't.
No,
have.
I did.
Oh,
I did.
okay. Well,
Yeah,
then
I
you're in
did.
big trouble.
Right. Well, so here's what I'm saying. So in the larger context of it, so I'm thinking of it in terms of the program that we work with. It's a partnership between Seattle Public Schools and Seattle Central College, a Grow Your Own teacher preparation, teacher certification program called Academy for Rising Educators. And the point of that program is we bring in instructors who model the relationship-based, student-centered, anti-racist approach so that they can model that for these candidates so that when they get into their own classrooms, they can model that for their students. And so within the walls of the classroom, it is the teacher's job to project equity, to make students feel included, seen, and heard. And so I understand the problematic nature of the rising tide floats all boats. However, if the teacher is doing what we are aiming for them and what the teacher is aiming to do, which is to make sure that everybody in the classroom has a boat. You know what I'm saying? To everybody, all the students in the classroom feel included, feel seen, feel heard, feel that they have maybe some bootstraps that they can work with or a boat that they can float in, that then the saying is more applicable. But I understand the problematic nature of it, of using that phrase just out in society. But here I'm thinking of it within the framework and context of an inclusive, equity-driven classroom that is the foundation of which is laid by the teacher who intentionally enters that classroom with the mindset, understanding that outside the classroom, okay, that philosophy may not work, but the environment that I'm looking to create in this classroom allows for that, the possibility of that saying to be applicable to all students. So I that's true. I probably should give some context to that saying before I throw it out there. So I appreciate the challenge.
Thank you, Dr. Abe. I've got another question here from Elga. Do you plan to, I guess she means get to the college level with your work? How do we expand the practice to reach true multiculturalism? In other words, away from normalizing white culture and othering other cultures.
So we have done some work at the college level here in our area. And I'm not sure what we might do in the future, but we've had some requests. Right now we spent the last 2 years putting a lot of things online and devoting a lot of time to that. So we're hopeful that in the future, perhaps with more resources, a larger staff, we might be able to expand into higher ed as well.
And yeah, I when I first started teaching in higher ed, so I came from a background of teaching kids in the 1990s in K through 8, and then going through the doctoral program after that experience. And when I got into higher ed and started talking to some of my colleagues, I was alarmed by the fact that, so very few of them had any actual training on how to teach. I shouldn't say it only takes a master's to teach in higher ed, but mastery of knowledge in a content area and being able to communicate that effectively to students are two different things. And so my observation of higher ed is that there's a lot of terrible teaching that goes on up there, and that the issues around problematic teaching in K through 12 are not isolated in K through 12. They actually extend into higher ed, and so this Academy for Rising Educators program that I mentioned. We're right now we're focusing. It's a K through 12 training program, but we have an articulation agreement with the University of Washington, so our graduates can go. It's tuition free, by the way, can go on and get their masters. And so I would like to eventually form a pathway for people who want to go to higher ed to be able to do that. And so, yes, I'm fully in 100% agreement that there needs to be serious addressing of the teaching styles and the teaching approaches. Because anytime in academia, anytime you get into a room, everybody in academia thinks that they're the smartest person there. And so it can be a little bit of a problem to try to tell people, well, you've been teaching for 10 years, but maybe you could use a little bit of adjustment in how you approach. So sometimes that can be difficult. But I think that at least with the candidates that we're working with, hopefully we can start to put a little bit of a crack in that wall right there.
And maybe just to add, put in a plug for Dr. Abe's program. This is not a UnityWorks program, but he's been working on this in Seattle schools, Academy for Rising Educators. And maybe if he could put his contact info in the chat, those who are interested in that could contact him directly. I also taught in higher ed for about 20 years and completely agree. There's a lot of change that needs to happen. So.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Dr. Abe, for bringing that point up about higher ed, because I've had the experience to work both in the K-12 realm and the higher ed realm. And just from my perspective, dealing specifically with students who have learning differences, for example, K-12 educators are trained to, confront that in positive, supportive ways with different methodologies. I didn't see so much of that happening at the higher ed level. And, for example, the K-12 teachers are often required to take professional development for that, whereas not so in higher ed.
You don't have to take anything. The higher ed teachers don't have to take any of that.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I know we're getting close to our time. I think we are just under 2 minutes. So I just want to, again, say thank you all for sharing this really, really insightful presentation. I feel like I learned a lot, and I'm serious. I wish I could go back and take this course again. This would be fabulous. But I'm just really, really excited by the work you're doing and inspired. So please just keep on doing what you're doing. And love you both. And we're praying and cheering you guys on as you're going forward, for sure. Howard, sorry to cut you off, man.
No, I apologize, brothers. I was just saying, keep growing this. I hope you keep expanding your work and get thousands of teachers in there.
Well, one iteration of this, though it's off to the future, is that in the National Race Amity Institute that we're trying to develop, UnityWorks, our intention is that it will be one of our offerings to educators nationally through the Institute. And we've been slashing away at that for years now, but it'll be a place where people can come and fuel up and be trained in these powerful methods of educating young people. So just to mention that as we're closing.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
all.
all. You're far too kind.
Mm.
All right. So here we are. Smitty, you want to guide us to the end of our time together here?
No, that's going to be you and Masood.
Oh, all right. Good enough.
Now, I was going to jump in at the very end.
All right. Good
and,
enough. All right.
just
Good.
give some accolades and throw out bunches of loves and hug to everybody and just preview a couple of future things. But I'd be interested in your insightful chit chat because you've been virtually into every program.
I think I missed one session, so I haven't
that's
tried to
gone
hang in
on.
here.
So I'm interested in what you guys have to say, and then at the end I'll jump in and just share some closing thoughts.
Well, maybe Masood, I'll start just by quickly reminding everybody of all the different things we've been exposed to here. We had, of course, we started on Thursday night with the Medal of Honor program, which was so inspiring, and wonderful education pieces that were done around that. And then Colette shared with us the power of amity and individual and organizational partnerships yesterday morning. We saw the medicine wheel art by Nadima Agard. That was just breathtaking. Some of those pieces really fascinating. And then that beautiful celebration of the legacy of Howard Thurman with Mellon Kennedy and Deborah Diaboli. And then Smitty, of course, Zebulon Dinkins shared that his great little docudrama with us about the precursors to the Brown versus Board decision. And Devin, who I keep, every time I mention Devin's name, Masood, I just keep shaking my head because this kid is on fire. I mean, what an amazing young man. I hate to say kid, but you know, when you get to be 71, 20-year-olds looks like kids. So no offense meant by that.
They are kids.
You got a couple of these, brothers. So you know, and then of course the Oneness chat with David Hoffman and Sue Bell St. Clair, Dwayne Rayner and Charles Bullock, and the Norman Rockwell Museum stuff. I mean, my gosh, just listing it, the incredible conversation between Penn and Masood last night. And then Celeste.
Off the charts.
Celeste's wonderful piece this morning, giving us so much great information and research, and the beautiful piece that Dorothy Longo shared about her family and their experience of jazz and these amazing jazz musicians who Dizzy Gillespie and her dad, that you know most of us know by names, but she actually gave them character and personality, and that was really special. And then Sonia Brown and Marshall LaJoy Berry gave us some insight into how to bring people together on an ongoing basis to talk about these things. Our great piece on mentoring with Audrey Falk, Reza Carrasco-Vez and Mike Shannon. And then finally, our last session with Randie and Daudi here. So it's been quite an extraordinary, a group of speakers and coming from lots of different perspectives. So Masood, any reflections on your part? Something you take away?
You know, I think the really encouraging thing is to come to these conferences, and I guess this is my second or third one, I can't recall. But anyway, it really is kind of an opportunity for us to get a sense of the work that's being done in the field, in a variety of different ways to address the issue of race and building community across false dichotomies and false barriers. And it's just really encouraging and inspiring, because what can happen is, and if we don't do these check-ins periodically, at least annually, and all of the craziness that we see going on in the world, it has a tendency, we run the risk of depleting the spirit and the enthusiasm and the energy for the work. This is the important work that we have to do going forward. So it's so inspiring for me to come and be in these spaces and hear the incredible work, that I'm hearing about this educational initiative that we just heard about, to listen to Celeste Headley, to spend time with Penn, to listen to all of these other presentations, and find that there are so many different ways to approach these issues from a variety of different, points of view that engage a person's particular talent and interest. And that's the beauty. I mean, everybody has a place and a part that we can play in doing this work. And we do it together, we do it collectively, even though we do it in our own way. But all of it adds to the to establishing that beloved community that Dr. King talked about, where justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream, brother. and we can truly sit together and feel a deep sense of connection at the heart, the spirit level that transcends all false barriers. So yeah.
Wow, so powerful. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that we need community to do this work, particularly people like the people who've been on the screen, who
Absolutely.
those of us who are doing this on a daily basis, going out every day and having these conversations with people, and it can wear your ass down. That's a technical term. No matter how much you love it, no matter how good you are at it, no matter how much people pay for it, it doesn't matter. You're going into the cauldron every day, really.
Yeah.
And to be able to come back and to dip into the well of community as a way to replenish ourselves. I'm remembering the words of the great poet, philosopher Audre Lorde, who said that self-care is a revolutionary act.
Yes.
And I think for me, being with other folks doing the work is always that kind of self-care, to remember that we're not out there by ourselves, and then we still got to get up tomorrow. I just popped into my mind while you were talking, this wonderful old Snoopy Peanuts cartoon strip that I used to carry with me, as I was trumping around here and there in different places and all different places every single day. And it's it starts with a picture of the doghouse and Woodstock, the little yellow bird, Snoopy's friend is sleeping in the house, and Snoopy comes over and he says, "What are you doing sleeping? Birds are supposed to be chirping and making the world better for everybody." And so Woodstock kind of raises his head up and chirps, and then drops down again. And Snoopy says, no, that's not going to cut it. That's not going to cut it. You got to do better than that. So the next thing is him with all the spaghetti there, and he's chirping. Finally, he collapses in exhaustion on top. And Snoopy says, "That's better, but now you got to do it every day for the rest of your life." And that's kind of how I think it feels, doesn't it, Smitty? I mean, you've been doing it for as many years as I have, man, and it feels like, well, oh man, what did we sign up for here sometimes?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
What helps me do it, I think what helps all of us do it, I think the reason people call in for things like this is because what helps us do it is community. What helps us do it is love. And that's, like we talked about last night, why for me, amity is a verb. It's not something to accomplish. It's a way of being. It's a way of working.
Absolutely. And, I have to say, Howard, on a personal note, between you and me, man, it's been a real joy, man, to spend, this time with you, brother, and to serve in this way. This is my first time, us serving together in this capacity. And I just really feel a connection to you, brother, and your spirit just shines through, man, and the love and the commitment. So I just really appreciate you sharing this space, man, with me. And it's been a real joy.
Hey, the feeling's very mutual. And when you get back from Africa and I get back from Mexico, we'll continue this conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely, my brother. Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
It's all you, man. You said you had some
bring us home, brother.
You on mute, man. I think you on mute, Smitty.
Just a few words. As you're the dynamic duo, man. Really, you truly are. I think about when I was a kid, and I used to watch the Mickey Mouse show. Okay, and there was always a sadness as a kid when I watched that show, and that sort of same sadness comes as we move into the closing of this conference. And you all remember the line, now it's time to say goodbye to all our family. And that's what this is at this moment. It's, just my saying goodbye to all my family that I've had the bounty and blessing of being with over the last couple of days. And to thank my family for your wonderful contributions in making this really a tremendous, uplifting learning experience that's buoyed everyone's spirits who've been connected over the last several days, the last couple of days. I want to thank again all the presenters, and some of them who actually my old friend Jackie Torrance, the story lady, who some of you may recall. She passed a while back, but America's greatest storyteller, Jackie Torrance, used to have this say when she and I would be doing something, and I say, Jackie, you're just so cool with your ability to talk and tell these wonderful, mesmerizing stories and to do these presentations. And she says, Smitty, I'm like a duck on the water, and it seems like I'm just gliding along, but underneath I'm pedaling like hell. So there's a lot of pedaling like hell, frankly, that presenters bring to making this conference a success. And some of them, totally unbeknownst to us, have hardships in just being here. One of our presenters lost a family member during this conference, a close family member, and decided that they could just hold on and do what they had to do to contribute to this and stay the course. So that's just representative of, the kinds of sacrifice and effort that people commit to in service to Race Amity and to promoting the unity and oneness of our human family. The volunteers who work with us, and I see Steve's smiling face, him and his crew, and their contributions in the wings to help all of this go smoothly, and to just help, frankly, with knuckleheads like me, because I'm a Neanderthal with a lot of the technology. No, I am, and I know, and I appreciate the patience of the support people who say, Smitty, you done asked me that question 5 times. The answer ain't changed. You got to do this, this, this. But we're very grateful to that staff of people and at CVET who've worked for months to the organization that provides the technical framework and setup for the conference. And of course, I have to mention the NCRA team, Michelle. Boy, Michelle, she has beautiful hair, but I wonder why she hasn't pulled it all out in guiding us through and answering and supporting us. And Jamila, thank you so much. And Glenn, who has just been a real workhorse as well. So thank you to our little core crew for all you've contributed. And last on this list of thank yous, again, the dynamic duo, you guys work so beautifully. The only problem with that is, we're going to be back at you again.
Gee, what else is new? When has that not been the case over the last 12 years that I've known you?
So, but thank you, brothers, from the bottom of my heart. I want to just mention a couple of things that are very important. And this is exciting news. And that is the 2023 National Race Amity Conference will be live in Atlanta, Georgia. So we're going to be on down there, Masood, coming into town.
You might need to get clearance, Smitty. They got to know you coming, man. They got to prepare the way, brother.
Well, look here, put out the word.
All right, we'll do.
It's like when Atlanta gets a snowstorm, the whole city shuts down.
Yeah, man.
No kids. NCRA is coming to town.
All right.
And that's going to be a dynamic program. We're looking at moving the dates maybe just a little earlier so that for a number of things that we're learning about the way we're structured in dates right now. But it will definitely be in November in Atlanta, and it's just chock full of not only the wonderful programs that we always have, quite frankly, but also we'll be able to spend some time being personally touched and interacting with those powerful symbols of race amity and access and justice at Ebenezer Baptist Church, at the Martin Luther King National Historic Site. And of course, at that time, we will, if not fully open, we will be totally visitable at the new National Race Amity Institute, which is right there, only 2 blocks from those historic sites. So that'll all be on the agenda in 2023. So start saving those nickels, folks, and we'll be getting the word out on all of that.
Because when we do that, we'll get hugs too. That's the important thing, right?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's exactly right. So we're excited about the coming months, the events we're having at the National Center for Race Amity. In February, we're bringing the fabulous diva Andrea Baker, who is an African-American classic mezzo-soprano who actually resides in Edinburgh, Scotland, but she's doing a US premiere. She did the world premiere in Edinburgh this summer, but the National Center for Race Amity is hosting her at the MFA, a very special event here in the US for her US debut of the one person presentation, I should say, I won't say songstress because she's beyond that, but it's Sing Sisters Sing, Songs of Transatlantic Freedom, which is a presentation and debut she will be doing here in the US in February. So I wanted to just mention those things to sort of get the juices flowing and to let all you know we're going to be playing back and bottling some of the things that happened here. And I got to tell you, Masood, I had a little conversation with Penn this afternoon during the lunch break. And the same accolade I gave to him, I must, obviously I got to share with you. You guys, man, were out of the park. And for me personally, no, it's a blessing because one of the challenges of this work is how do we engage the young people? And the type of conversation you have will register with them. And so, as I said to Penn, they say, if it's good, bottle it. So we're bottling this. We're going to edit that thing, and we're going to have a special program of that presentation the two of you did. We're going to have a special program in January where we're going to invite specifically, not the old heads, but high school and college students in a special event. And we're going to start promoting that very soon. But that was so darn inspirational. And I'll tell you, I know Brother Howard, have known him now for a few years, and the excitement that I saw in his eyes when he was talking back to you guys, I say, man, these brothers for surely have hit a home run.
Oh man, I tell you, I was dying, man. I was dying sitting here, like wanting to get into the conversation. It's just like, well, we're gonna do that though. We're gonna do that for sure.
A conversation could go one or two ways. Either it's going to be engaging and interesting, or it's going to put people to sleep. So our benchmark, our bar was, if we can keep most of the audience awake, we're doing okay.
and you did. So I'm going to say to everyone, and to you brothers, to our team, to the NCRA team, to the presenters, to the volunteers, to our helpers at CVID, um, is just a simple thing, but it keeps me going, and that is, may we all become the better in us.
Mm.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
And
Smitty, for the work that you do, brother.
God bless.
The inspirational leadership that you have provided doing this work. Love you, man. Thank you so much for what you've done. Thank you.
Love you both.
Amen to
Okay,
that, and
everyone.
women too.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Howard, we'll talk soon. Take care,
All right,
everybody.
you travel safe, brother.
Thank you.
All right, take
Good
care,
day
everybody.
to all.
Bye-bye
Good
now.
day to all. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap, right?